While doing work, I'm pleased to hear from you that you are familiar with what takes place in the Office of the Chief of Government Valuer. Indeed, we start by receiving instructions from the entity, in this case, National Social Security Fund. They provide us with the specific terms of reference, which we should base on to advise them accordingly. And on that note, we swing into action and come out with the quantum as recommendation. We were able to get valuation report for land in Naguru, valuation of portion of land comprised within mother's title of plot 2 to 19 Katalima Road, that is Naguru. I've also come with officers who were, the line officers who were handling it. And in this summary, we're also talking of when this valuation was done on the 7th of October 2022, the specific location being plot 2 to 96 Katalima Road, Nakawa Urban Council in Kampala. The tenure of the land is a freehold. The land size is it measures 56.855 hectares, which translates into 140.488 acres. This land, the subject property forms part of Naguru Police Barracks, comprised of plot 2 to 96 Katalima Road. The subject of this valuation is approximately 15.9 hectares, and it is located, of course, in Amari Zone. There are a number of unipots on the same land. It also extends to Sudan Zone with those descriptions therein, to Query Zone, to Central Zone, to the Italian UN UNAFRI Zone, and the Communication Flat Zone. Honorable Chair, I need to be guided to the extent to which I should make this presentation now that I have availed you with a copy of the summary as well as the detailed report. But for further clarifications, I can say we considered the assessment of the land component where we used 3.15 billion per acre as the well-researched, analyzed value of land in that area, and the rest became arithmetic, giving us a total of 127 billion shillings. I beg to submit for property number 1.
Honorable members, I believe we have the evaluation on. Is there any further presentation you'd wish him to make, or you'd wish to ask questions now directly? Questions?
Maybe I'm the one who has not conceptualized this, and it would be okay not to drop me along the way. I see property description in property number 1. And the impression I get is that this land maybe is encumbered. I see police uniforms and all that. I just need a clarification, just that.
Okay. Indeed, the subject land is encumbered with several self-helps. Due to the housing crisis in the police barracks, the officers were given opportunity to put up self-helps or houses that would accommodate them for now. But these did not form part of our valuation. Though they are described in the property description, we indeed did not include them in the valuation. Thank you.
So, when you assign that property, if it has encumbrances or not, and if you do, why isn't it indicated in your report?
When we did a search at the registry, or commission a land registration, the title has no encumbrances and it's registered in the names of Uganda Land Commission. It was registered in 2011. But these are physical encumbrances, which are the self-helps that are on the land. And we did mention them in our report and subsequently did not include them in our opinion of value. I beg to submit.
Honorable Back.
Chair, 5 hectares, your main interest was 15.913 hectares, and that is the land for Nssf, isn't it? Now, when it comes to valuation, you made the valuation of the land of that portion of 15.913 hectares to be 127 billion. And then you come down and say development 3.138 billion. What nature of development were you evaluating?
The developments mainly as described of self-helps. So most of the structures on the land are dilapidated and they only form a small part of the valuation. Most of the value is in the land.
Chair, I'm not yet convinced. I know that AML is dilapidated. That means it's at like Nakawa quarters, Naguru quarters, zero value. And any future intended person to develop that land, it's not part of the structure that he can use. Why do you give it a valuation of 3 billion? I want to be convinced on that.
The structures are quite many. Though they are dilapidated, we do attach value to note the depreciated replacement cost, to note their value then. Though if you go through, there are really a couple of them, over 700 structures. That's why we came up with 3 billion, though we did note the dilapidation.
They are still using them?
Yes, they are still using them.
The detail on valuation of number 1, because it gives the value for the land and also the value for the developments therein. I'm wondering why you did that only for that one, for number 1, and you did not do the same for all the others. And yet when I read their developments on all the others, look at number 2, the land in Nakigarala, there are also developments therein. Why didn't you value those developments? And more so when there are actually more than one title, there are several, you say all freehold titles, meaning there are many. Why didn't you do that, so that probably if people need to be compensated, then the value of their developments there is included? Is it the terms of reference for these others that made you do that? What happened?
Thank you, Honorable, for your question. For Nachigalala, the method or the basis that we used to arrive at the value was that Nssf was going to purchase this land, but to their interest, they are not going to keep on using this land as a tea estate. So we're looking at the prospective use of this land, and our valuation did not take care of the developments therein. Thank you.
One, I've liked the explanation of Nachigala, because according to Nssf, you are not going to continue using developing it for tea estate. Maybe they wanted to put housing structures, so there was no need of evaluating the capacity or the tea that was involved in it. Why didn't you use the same reasoning for number 1 at this Nakawa, whereby you are sure Nssf was not interested in the Amale, neither the imports?
Thanks for the questions. When you look at property 1 in terms of the evaluation sheet that has been given to us, you notice that there is a property description. And the concerns of the colleagues, members of the select committee, are eventually who is the owner of this land. So there should have been a column that shows ownership status. Because here, the next item, property number 2, Nachigarara, you've said it is not actually land belonging to Nssf. So in that column of ownership, you'd have said, you'd have told us who is the owner, and maybe described the interests of the fund in acquiring. Now, in the first one, therefore, the concerns would be, and that's why we are saying, is this land encumbered? So that in the ownership, we know what the title says.
Okay. Maybe.
Or the owner of Nachigarara.
Thank you. I'll just take you back to our mandate. Our mandate is to advise on all property valuations for ministries, departments, and agencies. So in this case, the entity that did approach us for valuation was Nssf. Yes, and it's the one that we're doing valuation for. Yeah. Now, going back to the honorable member's question, if you have the reports with you, I will start with valuation of a plot of land comprised within the mother title plot 2 to 96 Katalima Road.
Kindly wait, let members get to that.
Okay.
Which one?
This one. The reports are separated with the yellow.
Okay. If you're there, page 2. Yes, page 2, number 5. That's tenure and ownership. The such statement was carried out on the 15th of September 2022 from the Commissioner Land Registration, KCCA Ministry Zonal Office, and the title is a freehold, volume 1134, folio 4, land at Kampala Nakawa Division, Katalima Road, plot 2 to 96. The area is 56.855 hectares, and the owner is Uganda Land Commission of P.O. Box 36408 Kampala, registered on the 11th day of February 2011 at 2:40 under instrument number 443735, and it has no encumbrances, or encumbrances are none. So that's for Naguru. And if you turn with me to the report for Nachigalala, it's dated 30th of June.
At last. Members, are we there? Okay, proceed.
Yes, still under 5.0, tenure and ownership. The plots in question are 4 of them. We have plot 3, Busiro, block 366. It's registered under FRV, Wakiso, 3923, folio 6, land at Kansiri, Busiro, block 366, plot 3, and it measures 111.778 hectares. It's registered in the names of Madbani Group Limited of P.O. Box 121 Jinja, and it was registered on the 12th of March 2018 at 1:15 p.m. under instrument number WAC-00162626, and encumbrances, it has a caveat in favor of Madvan Group Limited of P.O. Box Messrs. Arcadia Advocates 28987 Kampala, registered on the 13th of November 2018 at 11:24 a.m. under instrument number WAC 00198131. Then we have plot 10, Busiro, block 374. It's registered under FRV volume 2, folio 23, land at Nachigalala Estate, Busiro block 374, plot 10. It measures approximately 9.774 hectares and is registered in favor of Madvan Group Limited of P.O. Box 121 Jinja, registered on the 27th of March 2017 at 3:54 p.m. under instrument number WAC-00120508, and it has no encumbrances. Then plot 7, Busiro, block 372. The title is registered in FRV volume 45, folio 2, land at Nachigalala, Busiro block 272, plot 7. It measures approximately 251.083 hectares and is registered in favor of Madvani Group Limited of P.O. Box 121 Jinja, registered on the 12th day of March 2018 at 1:15 p.m. under instrument number WAC-00162626, and it has no encumbrances. Now, as of then, we are not availed with a such statement for plot 2, Busiro, by the time we concluded this report, but we relied on the certificate of title availed to us, which is registered in FRV 333, folio 2, land at Nachigalala Estate, Busiro, block 374, plot 2. It measures approximately 49.1 acres, and the registered proprietor is Kachira Sugar Works 1985 Limited of P.O. Box 121 Jinja, registered on the 4th day of April 2005 at 3:30 p.m. under instrument number 352515, and it has no registered encumbrances. Thank you.
Okay, questions? The first one, a caveat by Madvan. It means there is a title in someone's names and Madvan has put a caveat. Is this true?
It's an owner's caveat. He put it himself.
Oh.
Yes. Yes.
Questions?
Chair, I was looking at the two documents. And of course, my first question goes to plot 3. The rest they have no encumbrance, no problem. But plot 3, which seems to be one of the biggest, I am wondering how the owner of the land can put a caveat. Do you normally face such circumstances, or usually caveats are put on land where there are 2 parties or 3 complaining of who is the genuine owner? Now, if this Nachigalala is to be sold, and when you are doing your evaluation, you include this one which also has a problem, don't you think it can mislead the buyer? I thought it would have been ideal, I just want to be educated, that you make evaluation for the pieces, like now, plot 10, it has okay. I think now I've understood that since owners can also allow to put caveats, then you are right, I think, by evaluating the whole thing. My question now is reserved.
It's just to protect your property. So you put a caveat, it's normal, you can also do it.
Okay.
Questions? We shall internalize, and where we need to get back to you, we shall communicate.
Thank you, Chair, and we appreciate your concerns and commitment to ensuring that we come across other assignments we did for National Social Security funds, which are not presented now. We should be in position to give them to you also in the earliest time possible. Thank you. I'm humbled. Thank you.
A firm was contracted through bidding process to build the pension towers, and they would be paid after. However, immediately after they received the contract, they backtracked and said they will not use their money and they require money from Nssf. So did you carry out any assessment of this transaction, this procurement? And did you find any issues relating to this procurement? Then on Appendix Q of what you have just submitted, I see the Minister of Finance asking you to verify a budget that was submitted by the Minister of Gender. It's an Appendix Q, honorable members, in this file. Appendix Q. My first question in regards to this letter: the Minister of Finance is not in charge of the budget, he is in charge of investment under the new act. Why was the Minister of Finance asking you to find or to give him a green light on this budget? The second question is, you raised on number 1, it's important from the onset that all monies in the fund belong to its members and should only be used for activities that are directly related to management of funds and in the interest of the said members. This means there are some issues you discovered in the budget. Can you kindly highlight on these issues you are referring to in this letter? Then how often are you supposed to carry out on-site inspection? Is it once a year? Because you are receiving 6 billion, 7 billion from this fund for a period of 1 year to do this work. So was this 6 billion you are getting from the savers' money legally, by the way? But was it for you to do only 1 inspection in a year? On the Minister of Gender, being on the board of Nssf and UBRA, the ministry, sorry, that is the PS. And another question: in your assessment or in your regulatory work, a loan that was given to Uganda Clays was written off. Do you have any information to this effect? We have questions? Honorable Gaff. That's T.
Appendix U,
You.
where you gave guidance to the Minister of Finance regarding a dispute within Nssf in 2016. I remember I'm the one who raised the issue of governance, a dispute in Nssf, and the question was relating to the current dispute on the board of Nssf, where 2 members of the board are being complained about. There's a petition that they did not come through normal channels, the two members from COFTU. If you were able to intervene in 2016 when there was a dispute, I'm wondering why you have not intervened this time when there is a dispute in the same board. Secondly, there is something unusual happening in the board of Nssf now, that members of the board, the current members of the board of Nssf, the fund is contributing to some of them, Nssf for them, as if they are employees of the fund. I know you are supervising all other retirement funds. Do you find this regular? Have you guided them about it? What do you have to say about that? Thank you. Had forgotten, we've discovered that some two members of the board of Nssf were forced to resign at the start of their term to create a space for a constitution of the board for gender balance. Number one is, did you find this regular? That after full constitution of the board, this board was constituted under the old law before the amendment. But somewhere, some two members were forced to resign so that they replaced them with the others that would show some gender balance. Did you find that regular? Number two, as if that was not bad enough, we have also discovered that those who were forced to resign, those who resigned and went away, the fund compensated them with what they would have earned for the full term, and it was paid to them as a lump sum, meaning that the board is paying now those who left and those who came in. That makes it a loss to the savers. Did you find that also irregular or regular? Was it okay? As a regulator, we want to hear from you also.
Okay.
I looked at the board meetings. I saw what they stated, that there was a recommendation from you concerning 50% of savings being used in form of mortgage and loans. Perhaps you could enlighten us more on that, in that savers can use, I believe, their savings as security to get loans or something like that. You can explain more on that. That was their board meeting of 13th May 2022. Secondly, it concerns the investment portfolio of Nssf, and we are told you've given them, how should I call them, the limits, that in fixed income they should invest this, they cannot invest more than this, in real estate more than this, and in equity more than this. So when yesterday when we interacted with them, we found out there is a problem in equities, because they're investing without some of them being listed, and some of them are not performing and all that. And they were saying they have reached the limits, and perhaps they have come and have had an engagement with you on how to go about it. So perhaps you can enlighten on that as well, because the fixed incomes, which are quite safe and profitable, I believe they have reached the limit at which you permit them to invest into that direction. So you can explain that as well. Thank you.
Trade Development Bank in 2021, Nssf purchased shares, but these shares were not listed on the stock exchange, registered, sorry, on the stock exchange. So we have reason to believe that they were solicited, because how would Nssf know that they actually selling shares? Then also in your supervisory findings, in your audited financial statements, did you carry out CAMEL ratings? CAMEL ratings, this is capital adequacy, management, earnings, asset quality, liquidity, sensitivity to market risk. Maybe you can respond to those for now.
I'll request the Chief Manager to answer the question on the inherent risks with the Nssf. And let me go to the other question. Maybe you can do that one quickly. We'll do them in order of submission. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Risk assessment versus the risks that we have highlighted versus the controls that are in place. And we also then assess it against the total portfolio of the scheme. What does the risk that we have highlighted pose to the whole portfolio of the scheme? And if it were to actually emanate, how does that affect the rest of the sector? When you look at all the risks that we have highlighted in Nssf, there are adequate controls in place that are being used to manage those risks. If it is investment, for example, you'll find that you have an investment procedures manual to begin with. You have different persons handling different portfolio, and they have different assessments. Beyond those assessments, they also then have a committee that looks at investments in totality. From what the officer has assessed to what the chief investment officer has recommended, and then that committee that also then looks at what that risk is. So on our side, we have assessed Nssf, and the risk of Nssf in totality against our portfolio stands at 1.2. That can be cancelled depending on the management controls in place, as well as what actions are taken when these risks are actually highlighted to Nssf. If it's an issue of governance, once we highlight the issue, is it remedied? The next time we do that risk assessment, it means that particular issue is going to be reassessed depending on what actions have been taken. I submit, Chair.
Let's go to fully-fledged risk department. You are aware of that? Do you have also the same on your side? When you are assessing the risk assessment on Nssf, do you depend on their report or you carry yours?
When we're assessing risk, it is beyond just the reports that are submitted. If it is, like I said, depending on which area it is going to be. For example, if we're looking at investment processing as an example, it means you're going to look at what do they have in place? Is what they have in place adequate? And how do we define that adequacy? It depends on the practice, the international practice. Because even for us as a regulator, we draw lessons and standards from different platforms. So when we assess that, we then come up with a risk rating. That risk rating is going to be mitigated by what controls are in place. We usually then will highlight these issues to the various schemes. So in this case, if it's Nssf, we highlight the issue to them. Sometimes the risk rating will point to us going for an on-site inspection. Sometimes the risk rating simply asks us to ask for additional information. So it's not only dependent on the risk profiling of the entity's risk department, it also comes from our side and the assessments that we do.
What is your risk matrix?
We have a risk matrix that spans all the way to 5, a level of 5. So depending on where the entity falls, And this has different parameters in it. For example, if you look at our current framework that we're using, we have 8 key risk parameters. Under each of the risk parameters, there are sub-parameters, and these will differ depending on the scheme. For example, if you're looking at Nssf as a mandatory scheme, its parameters are going to be different from the UBRA scheme that is an occupational scheme. You understand? So when we have that assessment, we will place it on that same profile, and we shall see, whereas you have, for example, risks at the level of 5, you have mitigants at a level of 3, for example. We compare that and the portfolio of that scheme and what it means to the sector and to the members of that scheme. That ultimately gives us the final position for that risk rating.
Can you share with us this matrix?
Yes, we can, sir.
The funding, that's the contraction of the construction, and where there was a contractor who was given a contract and then backtracked on the decision. That's on the pension towers. Chairman, I want to confirm that from our side, we are not aware of this discussion. When we are assessing the investments in real estate, like I submitted last time, for now we've been focusing on 3 areas which we shared. The first one is ownership. Is it in the names of the fund? Number 2, if it is given evaluation, is it consistent? Is the evaluation report to support that? And of course, the other one, we need to know, is the asset there? Is it in place? Those 3. And I also mentioned that the other area that we are going into is the value addition of that real estate in terms of how the investments are done into improve value or to enhance the property, and subsequently the payments of those constructions. That's the next phase of investigation that we are going to do. So for this particular process, and it's not even a requirement for them to seek our approval of the procurement, so we are not privy to that. The third question was on the budget. I think we are quoting an appendix we've shared. Under what circumstances did we provide guidance, and what were the highlights of the issue? Chairman, I wish to confirm that, to submit rather, this was a matter of the request of the 6 billion that was catered for, that was being considered to be included in the budget. So in the Minister of Finance, the matter was also copied into the Minister of Finance, and in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, sought our input as the regulator and provided guidance, which I've shared in Appendix 2. The details are there. The fourth one was on how often do we undertake on-site inspections? We undertake on-site inspection on the fund every year, but also undertake off-site surveillance, which we call off-site supervision. That one is also frequent, but it cannot be every month or every quarter. But your question seems to relate to the levy that we were being paid of 6 billion. The two are not related. They are not paying a levy for us to conduct the supervision. A levy was a statutory requirement then to be paid to the, like any other scheme that was licensed by us. They are paying a levy to support the operations of the regulator, and subsequently contribute to the development of the sector, not necessarily to focus on the supervision of the fund. The fifth one was on to comment on the board representation, Minister of Finance and Minister of Gender. Chairman, we addressed this question last time, but I request the head, our Chief Manager, Legal Services, she's an expert at corporate governance, to respond to this. But to us, it's provided for in the law. And we know there's no conflict because the persons represented there are different, they're not the same.
Let me give you a scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Ministry of Gender, you have a permanent secretary. On the board, his minister has requested for 6 billion. Under what circumstances is this personal permanent secretary on the board of Nssf going to refuse an instruction from the same minister who is going to approve the budget?
Chair, our understanding is that the fund is...
we were just asking you,
yes.
Do you think this is a conflict of interest?
We think it depends on how you exercise your fiduciary duties. The scheme, that's the fund, is separate from the sponsor. The sponsor in this case is government. So irrespective of the minister nominating a representative as the PS, your execution of work as a fiduciary should be seen to be separate from the onset. Now, how you exercise that fiduciary duty is a subject of how people see you executing that. Have we experienced any abuse of that? At least from where we sit, we've not noticed that. But like I've requested you, Chairman, we have an expert at corporate governance who is our board secretary. She can probably add more to that. Rita.
Thank you, Chair and honorable members, and thank you, CEO. To include a permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Gender, or a representative of those two permanent secretaries, as well as a representative of the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Public Service. And two of these ministries are also represented on the Nssf board, as you rightly noted. However, as the CEO has indicated, so far we have not experienced any conflict, probably because this is a creature of statute. It's the two laws that provided for the composition of the two boards. And currently, the members that represent or sit on these boards are different. In the case of Nssf, the permanent secretaries themselves sit on the board, while in the case of UBRA, they send representatives. So these are different parties that sit on these boards. But to address the issue of conflict of interest, in case this matter was to be discussed by the board, for example, the 6 billion, in that particular scenario, the conflict of interest guidelines require for a member that is conflicted in a matter being considered by the board to recuse or excuse themselves from such a discussion.
In the event that they don't?
In the event that they don't, then they are breaching the corporate governance practices, because it's not right for a matter to be discussed in which you have an interest. Then you participate in those discussions.
And what happens if they breach the corporate governance?
That discussion would be irregular because, but in this case, I don't know whether the PS was also conflicted, because that is where the question has to be answered.
The discussion would be irregular under which law?
Under the corporate governance principles, of where we require conflict of interest to be declared. And under the UBRA regulations, we required every scheme to come up with a conflict of interest policy. How do they treat such scenarios of conflict of interest?
Okay, let me give you 4 scenarios and you guide us because you're a professional. The former MD of Nssf, on October 29th, 2016, if I remember well, is appointed on the board of Uganda Clays, and is going to head the audit committee on that board. 2 months after, 2 months or 3 months, 29th December now, the same year, Uganda Clays, that has been making losses for the past 3 financial years, is given a 20 billion loan from Nssf. So the person on the audit committee of Uganda Clays is appointed. Who is he? Richard Byarugaba. 3 months later, Uganda Clays gets a loan from Nssf of 20 billion. Now, since that time, 2016, they have failed to repay back this loan, and we have information that it was written off. Scenario number 2, Dr. Lyomoki. He's the general, you call it General Secretary? Secretary General of COFTU. He writes to the same board where he sits requesting for 1 billion. Of that 1 billion, we have reason to believe he had already received some money. Scenario number 2. Scenario number 3, Penina. Is it Penina? Representative from Koftu. Is the corporation secretary at Koftu. Procedure.
I'm seeing here we are interfacing with the regulator of the sector. I'm seeking your guidance whether it wouldn't be proper for the petitioner to first excuse himself and we conclude with the regulator before he can come in.
Mr. Job, you have come very early for your appointment. Okay. But since we are finishing with these stakeholders, we request you go to the canteen and take some tea. You need your voice when you are presenting. You go to the canteen, take some tea. We are going to call you as soon as we are done with these stakeholders. Yes. Is what I have just mentioned. The permanent secretary of gender, the minister requests for 6 billion. The 6 billion is going to the same ministry where this permanent secretary sits from the fund. This same permanent secretary sits on the board that's going to approve the 6 billion. At the same time, the person who has written the request is his boss. Do I need to give you more scenarios now? Can you tell us as a professional now?
Scenarios you've highlighted clearly indicate circumstances of conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest. If I start with the first one, in the case of Uganda Clays, where the head of audit, chairperson, board audit committee, is then sitting on the other side of the fund as the CEO and probably participating in a matter considering a loan to be awarded to this company, that is an issue where this particular individual should have declared a potential conflict of interest. Because being chair on the other side, you are privy to information of what is happening in this company. So if the fund
including
is now,
the losses and
clearly, because audit committee is privy to all this information. So if the fund is now going to sit in a meeting to consider this request, you should recuse yourself and even provide the information that you know. Because as chair audit, you know all the internal controls, all the challenges a company is facing. So after providing such information, then it's only right and fair that you excuse yourself from these proceedings. So that will let the board consider independently with parties who are not interested or who don't have a potential conflict of interest. So that when these parties consider this matter, then they can guide. But if you participate in those proceedings, then you vitiate the whole aspect of, I mean, was there an interest? Impartiality is not there. But Chair, as we said, funds are required to have a conflict of interest policy. And we've required all retirement benefit schemes to have such a policy because these matters arise in so many scenarios.
does Nssf have a conflict of interest policy?
It's part of their board charter. But going forward, we've amended our new regulations that the minister signed on 20th early this year in January to require every scheme to have a standalone detailed conflict of policy, because that's the only way you can deal with all these scenarios: potential and likely conflict of interest and actual conflict of interest, because they are different scenarios. And Honorable Chair and members, the second scenario where a Secretary General of a union sits on the board and then requests for 1 billion, the same standards would apply, because already there is potential conflict of interest. Whether this money is coming to you as an individual or to the union, you're already interested. You're the head of this union. So once this matter is presented, the proper corporate governance practices require that you excuse yourself. Disclose to the board, tell them, look here, I'm the Secretary General of this union. This is the matter before the board. I am not supposed to sit in this meeting discussing this matter. So you leave it to the board to determine whether they find it proper or not to award such a request. But where you participate in the board proceedings, considering this money, and the board actually awards this request, it could be perceived as you interfered or undue duress to the board, because people will fear to challenge this request because you're there. So corporate governance practices require you to get out, let the members discuss, and then make a decision without being interfered with or influenced in any way.
Okay.
The second scenario, a corporation secretary of a union is appointed to the board. Chair, this points to the procedure within which these unions nominate their representatives to the board of Nssf. And from what we have reviewed, it seems like there is no clear procedure on how these trade unions nominate representatives to the board. So probably, if this committee finds it wise, that is one of the recommendations that should come out, so that this procedure is clearly detailed in the law or in regulations, so that before someone comes to the board, how are they
Have you
vetted?
looked at the constitution of COFTU?
No, Chair, I haven't looked at it.
The constitution of COFTU clearly states that any matter that is silent will be determined by the SEC. In this case, if there is no proper procedure, it should have been determined by the SEC. So it doesn't mean that there is no procedure. They provided for such an eventualities where you didn't expect. Did you look at the constitution?
No, Chair, I haven't seen it.
Has anyone found it?
My understanding of the role of UBRA is that they're supposed to do due diligence on all processes in Nssf, including constitution of the board. Have you ever done due diligence on the constitution of the board of Nssf? Because this is under your ambit.
May I respond, Chair?
You can respond, and I read you this after, because it is a leading question. There are many questions coming after.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honorable Member, for that question. Indeed, it's right that the UBRA law requires us to do a fit and proper on the Board of Trustees of Nssf or any other scheme that we license and regulate. And as disclosed in the documents we provided before this committee, on several occasions, we have done a fit and proper on the individuals nominated for appointment on the board of Nssf. And as you will see from the appendices we have attached before you, there's even a court judgment where we did an assessment and found an individual not fit and proper and were challenged.
No, I did.
However, Chair...
Excuse me, I didn't ask due diligence on individuals. I meant due diligence on the process of getting these individuals to the board. Leave alone the individuals themselves.
Chair, the law allows us to do a fit and proper on the individuals nominated for appointment on the board.
So if a staff from the Ministry of Finance came to and masqueraded to have been sent by the minister, you wouldn't find out? Or two of them, how would you find out without due diligence on the process?
Diligence we carry out would require you to provide the letter nominating you for appointment on that board. Because ideally, a masquerade wouldn't have an instrument of appointment.
What proof did you get for members who came from the Federation of Employers, from COFTU, from NOTU? what did you see that as evidence of the people who were sent from those unions?
Supplementary to his question. Have you ever got any petition either from NUTU or COFTU about their members on the board? And if so, what action did you take?
Thank you, Chair. I confirm we received a petition from the members of COFTU regarding the nomination of some members to the Nssf board, and the matter is currently being handled by our Chief Manager, Market Conduct and Supervision. I would request with the permission of this committee for her to respond.
No, before you pass it on 20th August 2021, upon receiving names, wrote to the Executive Director, UBRA, requesting for vetting of the nominees. In your communication to him, you vetted Dr. Samuel Yomoki and you concluded. You vetted him based on the letter he submitted, where he signed nominating himself. It is here. Nomination of workers' representatives to the Board of Trustees of the National Social Security Fund, Nssf, written by the Secretary General, Dr. Samuel Yomoki, nominating himself in this letter to the board. Now, you have just been giving us a very good lecture about conflict of interest and the statutes and the laws you break, but it is UBRA that confirmed the same person who nominated himself in the same letter he signed. And you confirmed with the Honorable Minister Matia Kasaija, who proceeded with your guidance and put him on the board.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, for that observation. At the time of our vetting, this information had not yet been disclosed to the authority, that actually that particular individual had nominated himself on the board.
When you read this letter,
yes,
Chair,
and you see the person who signed, you can automatically see the Secretary General has signed, known as Dr. Samuel Yomoki, nominating. The letter is saying, we have nominated Dr. Samuel Yomoki.
So when you received that letter nominating Dr. Samuel Yomoki, signed by himself, was it accompanied by resolutions of an organ of COFTU?
thank you. Chair, I wanted to respond to that question. Chair, it's a procedural question. The letter that is being referred to was a forwarding letter to us by the Honorable Minister. And it was attaching a letter that the chairman is referring to, which was not addressed to OBRA. For us, we look at the nominated persons. Upon getting the names, then we do our fit and propriety test. Then we source out for the documents on the individual. Are you fit? Then we go into your qualification in terms of professionalism, your financial conduct, your creditworthiness. Then you look at whether you're a good citizen, you pay tax, then you get certificate of good conduct. We get your tax clearance certificate. Then we get also a certificate from the Credit Reference Bureau. And then we also inquire internally on other things, on the individual. Now, as far as the process of that person being nominated to the minister to forward the name to us, we are not privy to that information. Ours starts from when the names are forwarded to us. That's what the minister wants us to vet.
Chair, supplementary. UBRA, you are the regulator and the supervisor. I'm interested to learn that you conduct the fitness of an individual. I don't know using what formula and tracking and tracing the individual for how long. That is your formula, I don't know. But you see, my concern is, now assuming that you do not see that small mistake that an individual has signed for himself, assuming, but then you get a petition You mean when you discover the mistake, you cannot revisit and recommend back to the minister that we had not seen this? And according to the Corporation Secretary, is it the title? You say, yes, you received the petition and the certain officer is processing. It's a process. I don't know when, which year, and is the process going to be concluded when the term of the board has expired? These are some of the things that we need to be clarified. And furthermore, when the Corporation Secretary was responding, I had not wanted to ask, you are quoting the UBLA law, the Nssf law, but even these laws can have some mistakes. Somewhere, somehow, you quoted the corporation, the corporate governance principles. And we are here to seek your guidance. That do you see any problem with the law? If we are to recommend for an amendment of the law, which sections should we recommend? You are the people to guide us. But if you say, for the time being, we have not got any problem, is that enough? Are we waiting for the problems to occur first? That's it. This reminds me, Chair, of some countries, including ours. You don't wait for an enemy to attack you in order to buy a weapon. You prepare yourself so that an enemy should fear coming there. Now, the same, you should be the ones to guide us. You don't wait for something to happen, but you straight away to tell us, in this law you passed, we are seeing this weakness. And Chair later gave you very good examples, which is affecting you also, of the PSC's existences in the, on the NANI, because it has been tradition. UBLA is under finance. The board member who is representing the PS in finance is your boss. How do you supervise him?
Honorable Amos, let you respond at once.
Yes, Chair. Actually, I want to more detailed inquiries, but in simple terms, what this committee wants to know is the fit and proper exercise or vetting a one-off or a continuous exercise?
Okay, just before you respond, the letter Honorable Kasaija wrote to you, the Executive Director, states it has so many names: Dr. Peter Chimboa, Luabaya Mudiba, Bahemuka Julius, Dr. Samuel Moki, Dr. Engineer Silva Mujishi. Please note that in order to have appropriate skill balance in the Board of Trustees, I am looking for fit and proper individuals in accounting, finance, economic qualifications. But I am seeing doctors, so I don't know if these doctors you approved or if you made an exception anyway. Do these doctors have accounting, finance, and economic qualifications? Or any other person? Let's not look like we are targeting a doctor only. But please respond.
When I was building a case on on the process we followed, and the petition that is being referred to is something that we've just got 2 weeks ago. It's not that we had it at the point of assessment. The information we had, that's what we requested for, was the academic details of a person, the certificate of good conduct, the other details of a fit and propriety test. Is it a one-off process? We do fit and proper to qualify for appointment as a board. So in principle, we use it to appoint. However, in the event of execution of your duty, we establish any matter that would necessitate any person that has been appointed as a trustee of any scheme, or he has performed a matter that is of a misconduct nature. We have the reasons to request you why we should not revoke your license. The Act is very clear on the process of revoking, a license that has been issued to a trustee. But for purposes of confirming on the submission of the petition, I want to confirm that by the time of undertaking the fit and property test, we never had that petition. We got the petition just recently, and I think in our meeting last week, I reported that we've got information on a particular board of trustee, and we're undertaking investigations, and we shall subsequently inform the appointing authority thereto.
The ED is saying, he just said the petition against illegal nomination of 2 Nssf board members representing COFTU has just been received 2 weeks ago. I have a copy of the petition here with a stamp received by UBRA on 1st of September 2021. I have it here. Is there another UBRA apart from the one we are interfacing with?
There is one UBRA.
Stamps received are here. It is received by UBRA, received by the Minister of Gender, received by Nssf, received by Ministry of Finance, 1st September 2021. Is there another petition you received apart from this?
Chair, the petition we received is a result of documentations we've received from the board of directors, and that's what I'm confirming. And that's to the best of my knowledge. But if there's something stamped by us, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you have not finished responding. I see you're switching off the microphone.
Yeah. Chairman, the other questions, can I proceed?
Proceed.
Chair, there was a question on, I think the question we are dealing with was on the board representation that has led to this.
No.
The other question was on the loan that I'm trying to follow.
I read this letter, and the terms of reference the minister gave you. I am looking for fit and proper individuals in accounting, finance, and economic qualifications. Because you have put a disclaimer, you have said you don't go to the constitution of these unions and whatsoever. But you do a fit and proper test, and the minister clearly gave you terms of reference. Are these people all, because you verified and approved all of them, are they all having accounting, finance, and economic qualifications?
Chair, the requirement was not necessarily for all of them to have, but to balance the board and to ensure that those qualifications are there. But let me ask my colleagues to respond to that.
Thank you, Chair. The fit and proper assessment that we conduct is on all the names that have been submitted to us. So the assessment, as we submit it to the minister, will indicate who of those have the financial background, who of those have the economic background. At the end of the day, it is the minister that will appoint. Our part, we assess and give the minister the full assessment across board. So if you look at, we can submit the assessment that we submitted to the minister. It has the detail from each of those beyond academics, academic qualification, to credit reference, to tax compliance. So that whole assessment is done, and we submit that to the minister. In that assessment, we sometimes will guide on which components the board is missing. For example, there are instances where we have guided on gender, and we still leave it to the minister to make the final decision.
Did you guide on gender on this specific board?
On that specific, I need to confirm, Chair, from the assessment.
Can you confirm right now, because it is it's a serious issue?
Yes, sir.
You can confirm and get us that guidance.
Thank you. The next question was on the loan to Uganda Clays being written off, whether we are aware of this. Yes, we are aware of a written off for purposes of financial account presentation and for disclosure, but that does not mean that the recovery of the fund is not supposed to be done. We demanded that there has to be a security to this loan, and the title has to be...
Tell us who wrote it off, because you did, I'm sure you were in Nssf and you found all these documents. Tell us who wrote it off, what procedure was used to write it off, how much was it? Maybe we have a wrong figure.
No, as far as picking what was written off, we picked it from the financial statements, and our interest was, if this loan was written off, did it have any security? Our interest is to protect members' funds.
But it was unsecured, you are aware?
It was, yes, and that's where, and that's exactly where I'm coming from. We asked, is there a title to this? Is it in the names of the fund? At that point in time, the title was not yet in the names of the fund, but now we can confirm it has been put in the names of the fund. The second question we asked, is there a payment plan to recover this money? We've not yet received that confirmation. But being written off in the accounts did not mean from our side. We had to find out whether, despite being written off, is there a position of recovering this money, because that's our major mandate. Once we were able to ascertain there is a security to it that can be disposed of. Is it in the names? That was our concern. Now we have confirmation it is.
What is in the names?
It's in the names of Nssf.
The company?
No. With the security.
Which security? Because the loan was unsecured.
Now there's a title deed. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Chairman. Our interest was, if you're writing off this, how are members' funds protected? Is there a security to this?
So,
is it in the names of the fund?
So they wrote off 20 billion and got what in exchange?
What we know, there is a land title in the names of the fund.
Because you're a regulator, you should know these details. How big is that land? Where is this land?
Chair, I was supplementing on this. I'm not an accountant. I've come to know it. Always, when there is audited accounts presented, and the data has repeatedly been coming, members will say, we are tired, write it off, as we have said, for accounts purposes. But in most cases, experience has shown, when you write it off for accounts purposes, that will be the beginning of the journey for it to completely disappear and people not bother about it. You are talking as if you are praising the accounts, but the money will be recovered, I doubt.
And you see, just wait, I'm sure Honorable Masawa is going to come. When you write off a loan, it means that company has totally failed. This loan was given to them in 2016 or 2010. 2010 actually. It was 2010. Let me just check for the record purpose. It was 2010. If you write off a loan now that was given in 2010, it means they cannot totally make this money. 2008, 2009, 2007, this company was making total losses. What does Nssf do? Gives a loan, it's a bailout. The next 2 years, they are showing a slight recovery, and they go back into losses now, which leads to writing off the loan. This loan was supposed to be paid in a very short period. I think it was 1 year. But now, 2010, this is 2023, you can imagine 13 years. So if you write off a loan, doesn't it mean that company has totally failed to pay?
No, Chair. Writing off a loan is informed by how long that credit has been unpaid. This is a bank practice. I think it is, I can't be precise, but it's either number of years or months. But that does not mean, this is where I'm insisting, that does not mean that being written off is irrecoverable. No. especially when you have a security, you have to recover it. And number two, you can even liquidate the security.
Chair, let me think it this way. Educate me. I'm a work contributor, right? My 10 or 20 billion, you have bailed somebody, and it's no longer generating interest. How is the worker viewing it? How is the worker benefiting? In so many years, you wrote it off because the other company is not performing. I want you to guide me so that the worker is safe, that either it is written off, me I'm still gaining something.
I pretty understand you from the value of the member, not that for them they are losing. The principle is that members' funds are not supposed to be lost, and if it's an investment, it has to maintain its value plus any interest thereof. Now, the 20 million we are talking of, actually, the loan was not 20 million, but I also understand that there's time lost between then and now, so the member is losing money. But like I've said, we demanded that there has to be a payment plan to recover this money, which is being worked on. At least we've not yet got that information as yet, but we demanded that there has to be a payment plan. And once there's a payment plan, normally it means you are making good that loan. It has to go back in the books of accounts for disclosure purposes.
In a meeting of 22nd December 2021, among the resolutions, meeting this Appendix J on that specific matter, the unsecured loan of 20.5 billion to Uganda Clays, Nssf was supposed to submit the payment plan, the agreed payment plan with Uganda Clays by 31st December 2021. This is Feb 2023. Did they submit that?
Like I've stated, we've not yet got that plan. If we had it, would be tabling it here. What we know is that there's a tight, at least there's a security now, but the plan is of more of our interest. And what we are trying to work after, Chairman, once there's a payment plan, then the loan can go back in the books of accounts.
But Executive Director, you regulate. We want to understand what Uganda Clays gave us in exchange for the 20 billion that made you think it is now okay. Now we have a title. Okay, they gave us a title. Where is that title? How big is that land? Where is that land? What made you comfortable as a regulator that now everything is okay?
Chair did not say that we are comfortable as a regulator. Like I've said, the security is a partial commitment. Where we are more comfortable is the payment plan, because Uganda Clays is still a going concern.
Okay, let me ask in another way. Is the security, is what the security, the worth of this security, is it worth much more than the 20 billion, or you just picked something for the sake, okay, let's just get a plot here?
Yeah. Chair, I cannot confirm on that. What I know, there's a title which had no valuation report and in the names of the fund.
Oh,
but that's
wait. So you got a title that had no valuation report in exchange for 20 billion?
It's not got. They don't need to submit to us. They just need to provide evidence confirmed to us. We don't keep titles. They provide the evidence. Like I said, Chair, we demanded for this. We should also, and that it was the result of our demand. This loan has to be secured. Number two, it must have a payment plan.
Who of your staff participated in this?
The inspection, Chair.
This specific matter of the Uganda Clays.
So the issue of Uganda Clays has come up at different platforms. One, from the on-site inspections, and also from financial analysis. We wrote to Nssf as a follow-up, and we received a response in December of 2022. That response indicates that the Uganda Clay's loan has been restructured. And in that restructure, Uganda Clays is supposed to pay interest rate of 14%, paid semi-annually. And also, there was a requirement that Uganda Clays provide security for repayment of this loan. From my quick interaction with the team at Nssf, they have this morning indicated that they received the security. All this is to be verified at the on-site inspection, because we need to verify what security, their titles, the certificates of title that they received. Like you said, the value of that title vis-a-vis the 20.5 billion, as well as there's a requirement for them to caveat. We need to confirm that the caveat has been placed. That's information that we shall confirm at the on-site inspection. But from the responses,
is that information you are giving, that feedback from Nssf, is it written or verbal?
the feedback is written and is Appendix L in our report.
That's what exactly I'm referring to.
Yes.
I'm looking at Appendix L on the second page, number 2. Payment plan with respect to the unsecured loan was 20.5 billion. And in that whole explanation, the payment period being discussed is 7 years. And that's when you have said you have not received the payment plan. The payment plan is supposed to come with that security, which you say you have not received. That's why I'm asking, is that information now you are telling us given to you verbally, because you have not seen it?
Yes, on the part of the titles being submitted to Nssf, that is a verbal confirmation from Nssf.
And you want to trust that verbal communication from Nssf
Chair.
now that they give it to you during this period
Chair,
of this
there is
inquiry?
something I am not understanding. Yeah, there is something I'm not understanding.
Honorable Bak.
Oh, this
Do you want to confirm to this committee that the verbal information you are getting is correct, considering that you have not seen the payment plan, you have not seen the title as security? Because this appendix you are referring to is a document of 16th December 2022. There is no other additional written information you have. You are only relying on verbal feedback from Nssf.
You've rightly stated it, sir. We cannot confirm anything until we have the written confirmation. And this we shall do at the on-site inspection or until Nssf submits the same.
Honorable Baka.
I seem to be getting confused. When was the security supposed to be submitted? You are saying that Nssf has talked to you, they have now received the security after how many years? I thought the moment the 20 million, by then it was, is it 11 billion or something like that, was subjected to craze. That is when the security was supposed to accompany. In case you fail, you have given me the security. I think that's how things are done. You demand the security when somebody has failed. I've never seen it. You go to the bank to get a loan, say like a centenary, they will say, wait, since you have given me the loan is 3 years, I will bring the security after 3 years. I've never seen it. They can't give you a penny until the security is there. And the letters of powers of attorney are associated with that security.
And maybe you need to tell us, is Nssf now lending private companies money?
Can I submit on
Please.
that? So the initial loan for Uganda Clays was unsecured. When we had the on-site inspection in 2019-2020 financial year, that's one of the issues that we raised. One, you're not receiving income from this entity, and it is an unsecured loan. Unsecured loan at that time. In that agreement, the financing agreement, there was powers given to NSSF to force Uganda Clays into liquidation to recover money if they fail to pay. That was one of the options available to NSSF. However, with Uganda Clays now being listed, they looked for avenues of not liquidating but ensuring they recover members' money. That is what culminated into the restructure of that loan and the current securities that we see. The process of restructuring that loan has had various discussions, and that is what NSSF is now updating us on, where they have reached as at December 2022. So the initial loan was unsecured. The security is now coming in at the restructure of that loan.
Honorable Baka.
Chair, scheduling the repayment of the loan is not my problem at the moment. My problem is we want guidance from you. And by the way, you are not NSSF. No, you're a supervisor. We want to see what was your role. Somebody got 20 billion. What was the security? However good you are to me, either you're a friend or not, you come to me, you say you want a loan of 10 million only. I will say, how can I be safe? You say, I've got my land title. I've got my log of the vehicle for security purposes. Now I'm asking, under corporate governance, is it procedurally right for such a loan to be taken for such a period without any security? I want a brief answer.
And unsecured, of which this loan was unsecured, and on top of that, unsecured to a company that was making losses. Don't you want an answer from
Chair,
corporate governance?
Chair, maybe that will not be a corporate governance answer. But two things, Chairman. Number one, when the loan was first made, the regulator was not there. I think that was in 2011. 10. Number two, when we undertook on-site inspection, we identified this unsecured loan and we raised it. And we demanded, yes, we raised it. And we demanded this loan has to be secured. And the process of getting secured is what we are discussing now. But also say, if you are now writing it off, because now realize in the following accounts, they're writing it off. He said writing it off can be misinterpreted, like rightly Honorable Bakas stated. But we need assurance that there will be a recovery of this loan. And subsequently we demanded a payment plan. It is not yet given for sure, but like you've said, those are things that when we do the next on-site inspection, we go on and verify and demand. Just to give you assurance that in our terms of reference, supervisory works or inspection works for the next on-site inspection, that issue is there. To verify, number one, is the title now there? Two, is it in the names of the fund? Number three, does it cover the value of the loan? And of course, number four, is the payment plan present? Then we can provide that assurance Honorable Baka is asking for, of the assurance to the member.
Can you share with the committee all the documents you have relating to this Uganda Clays loan?
Chair, we've shared what we have. Like we've said, we've not yet got a copy of the land title. Once we get it, we shall share. We've not yet got a copy of the plan. Once we got, we shall share.
Okay, 2016, regarding loans as well. Housing Finance was given a loan worth 29 billion. But when you look at the financial statements of 2021-22, only 9 billion shows as outstanding. However, in the financial statements, there's no evidence of the 20 billion ever being paid. Have you come across this incident? 20 billion, the loan was 29. The financial statements show the balance of this loan is 9. But at the same time, the financial statements do not show where the 20 went because it's not captured as having paid. So where is the 20 billion?
Chair, we cannot confirm the details of the 20 billion, but what we normally, once we get financial accounts are normally prepared on the balances, the outstanding balances, not the flows. The question you're asking should have been disclosed for sure. We had a loan of this amount, and it has been paid to this extent. That information is not there in the accounts. But what we know,
so you are confirming, just for the record, that you have also not seen the 20 billion?
I cannot say not seen. It was, the flow was not disclosed. Where interest, normally accounts are presented on the outstanding balances. But the flow, what happened, because the trend, it has to be, was it showed as an opening balance at some point, and is there a reduction in it? What happened? That kind of disclosure is what should have been there.
Chair, I just want some clarification. If it is the right procedure we're following, a board member goes to Nssf, is a board member, he becomes a board member of CRACE, he becomes a board member of Housing Finance, but those two entities are going to borrow from Nssf, but when he's seated on the other board, is there no conflict of interest? And this is what is happening to most of these board members. They don't sit on one board. We send them to Nssf, they're in housing finance, they're in CRACE, I think there is another company. But when that company is borrowing, he sits on the other board. Is there no conflict of interest? I want the Corporation Secretary to answer me that. An expert in corporate governance.
Honorable Chair and members, there will be a conflict of interest in such a scenario.
Yes. And this is what is happening.
Okay, kindly respond to the few
Chair,
remaining.
will locate in the accounts. I don't know if you have it with you there, the ones of June 2022. I want them to put it clear on record that because he's saying that he's claiming that money can recover according to what he has said. But when you go to that very page 54, the Uganda claims the 20 billion. They have put allowance for credit losses, literally meaning they are taking it out. When you turn to the statement of net assets, they have loans and advances, which is 9.3 billion. That is the balance without this money. So it's literally out. In case it's to come back, then they will bring it back as perhaps other incomes or something like that, which is at the discretion of Uganda Clays, whether they can bring back part of it or they will not. So if they decide not, then we are making a loss. If they bring the money, then it could come as perhaps another income or something. So that is something I wanted us to put out clearly, that we've lost this money. Literally speaking, right now it's not there, it's not anywhere, and it's not recoverable unless the other people feel mercy, or we are at their mercy, that they decide that maybe let's pay back some of the money.
Chair, on that particular question, can you give us a benefit of doubt? Like I've said, we identified this, we took action, we demanded for a security, which we've been told is there. Like observed by Honorable Gaffer, we need to get evidence. Number two, we need a payment plan to recover this money. Yeah. So on our side, we cannot say money has been lost, for sure. If that evidence is there, it's going to be recovered. That one I can confirm.
Has Nssf started giving loans to private companies?
Chair, giving loans, first of all, giving loans is irregular by our act. Because a scheme is not supposed to give loans.
It's supposed to be investigated.
But we should also understand the circumstances within which these loans have been given.
Do you have
you observed it, Chairman.
Executive Director, do you have a Corporation Secretary?
Yes.
Present?
Yes. She's here.
Can she kindly switch on the microphone? He or she? Oh. Oh. Corporate governance stroke. Is it legally, is it legal for NSSF to give private companies loans?
Chair, it's illegal and it's prohibited under Section 68 of the UBRA Act that restricts how scheme funds should be used.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, yeah.
Honorable Gaffer?
It's out of what we've been discussing. I looked at Appendix Q, and I got interested. First of all, I'm happy with this guidance from UBRA to the Minister of Finance. However, Chair, I'm interested in knowing what the Minister wanted. You did not show us the letter from the Minister of Finance. What was his request from the approval of the budget of NSSF? You are giving guidance, you are giving your view as UBRA, but you did not tell us what the Minister of Finance, what his concerns were in that letter. I'm interested in knowing that, because it's an issue we've been grappling with, and I would be interested in knowing what the issues were in his request before you responded like this. And your response is very good.
Chair, we did not carry the letter the minister wrote to us. We shall share that letter.
But yes, you will say, but would you quickly, probably offhand, indicate what the issues were that he was raising in that letter, so that we wait for the physical copy of that letter?
Yes, since I don't, since I'm not reading from the letter, I request that I present that letter.
Chair, I request that through you, you demand from UBRA that letter from the Minister of Finance that led to this response.
Okay.
Okay. Chair, other questions were...
Can you submit this letter?
I think we can ask somebody to deliver it.
Can you do it in the next 5 minutes?
She's going to send a message. Somebody.
Summarize.
Chairman and directors, the other questions were on the current funding of to the board members. I think we've mentioned that. Is it legal? It is illegal. From our side, first and foremost, we are learning some of these details from this committee. The accounts we get do not unpack the details. Once we go on site, that's when we begin to unpack. But one of the solutions we're having to that, the new regulations that the minister passed last month, would provide us for more details, more disclosures of that kind. So going forward, we shall be able to know. But that's now an area of our inspection going forward. Where was this money? What was it for? I cannot speculate for now. The other question was, after, I think this one has been answered. After the constitution of the full board, some 2 members, we are not aware of being forced, but we are aware of being sent to two names of people replacing others. The circumstances of replacement were not given to us. But those, for us, once we are given names, we vet and submit a full report.
UBRA, be clear to us. Were you aware of the 2 names not being forced, but resigning?
We are not aware of the resignation, but we are aware of being sent to other names for vetting, which we did and submitted the report.
Maybe Corporation Secretary, then Honorable Gaffer. If 2 board members resign, they may have agreed or may not have agreed, but they put in resignation letters. Are they entitled to all you can call it allowances that they were supposed to receive during that remaining period?
No, Chair, because the fact that you resign, you forfeit the benefits you would have received. So in case they resigned and they were paid, that was irregular.
Honorable Gaff.
I need the attention of the CEO. CEO, you just mentioned that you were not aware of the resignations, but you just received 2 more names for vetting. My understanding is that when you finished the vetting and the constitution of the board was concluded, as a regulator, you were updated that the board of Nssf had been fully constituted. Yes or no? When the board was appointed by the minister, did you get this information as a regulator?
Yes, we did.
So when you got 2 extra names and you know the law under which they were appointed, what came into your mind? That they were adding on the numbers over and above what is indicated in the Nssf Act?
Actually, the 2 new names that came to us were sent to us in a way of applying for a license, not being applying for a license, because we issue licenses for being a board of trustee. So it was not in a form of a letter notifying us of new nominees, but once you're applying for a license from us, we do the full process and then submit that detail, whether you qualify or not.
So when they were appointed finally on the board, you were also notified as a regulator?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Did you find out what happened, whether they were additional in excess of the statutory number in the law, or there were members who had left as the regulator?
So when these names came in for licensing, the other members of the board that you're talking about, the 2 that had resigned, as you've informed us, their licenses were actually expiring at that moment. So we didn't need to check the composition because the composition, as at the time of licensing, was within the legal limits. So when these names came in, they came in application form, license application form, not in the form of vetting. They came as license applications and they were processed as such and tallied against the rest of the board members of Nssf to ensure that they are within the number, not more than 9 members.
What is the duration of the license?
1 year.
So when there are licenses, you know, as a regulator, my expectation, which is in your law, is that you are supposed to be at all times aware of the constitution of these boards for proper governance of the schemes you are superintending. So you are telling us you are just learning from this committee that there are new board members that were appointed by the minister on the board of Nssf?
No, that's not what we are saying. We are saying that at the point of renewal of license, the submission to us for renewal included those 2 new members. The old new members, their licenses had expired, and therefore the submission did not come. So in principle, for us, we are looking at, is the board constituted? Do the numbers match that are provided for in the law? And the submission was speaking to that. Questions from Honorable Masava. I think his were more of recommendations. Recommendations for mortgage, yes. We issued a regulation, I think sometime last year. Was it last year? Yes. About helping members to use their benefits as a collateral. But the idea here is that the money is not paid out, but rather it can be exposed as a collateral for a member to get a mortgage for a loan. Now, the implementation of that law by the Nssf fund has a bit of limitations because of their act needs. I think there's a provision that needs to be amended to accommodate that. But the principle is there, and it has been well embraced by other schemes, but it's not well received by the fund today because of that limitation. But the legal counsel can guide on that.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Chair and Honourable Members. As stated by the CEO, early last year, the Minister of Finance issued regulations under the UBRA Act, Section 68, allows a member to assign a portion of their benefits as collateral for a residential house. So those regulations were enacted under the UBRA Act, and all schemes are required to amend their trust deeds to enable a member assign. They don't pay out, but you can, just like you go to the bank and take a title, in this case, your benefits, the balance on your account will be the security for you to get a residential house. Because you know in Social Security, a house is very important. Everyone needs a house. So, but the challenge with the Nssf Act, their section 34, subsection 4, prohibits any form of assignment or charge on a member's account. So although these good regulations, well intended, have been passed under the UBRA Act, the members of the Nssf Fund are constrained. They cannot enjoy this benefit. So this is one of the proposals to this Honourable Committee as you consider amendments. This section is one of the areas that can be amended to enable a member, because members have sufficient balance. We've noticed members who go into retirement and they don't have a house. Some are even where they have companies that provide houses, they don't want to live because they haven't constructed their own houses. So this was the purpose of this regulation, to enable a member. You can either get a loan from a bank to construct, but you don't need a title. You can use your benefits as collateral. You could already have your plot of land. You only need to construct. So this is being constrained by Section 34, subsection 4 of the Nssf Act that prohibits the assignment of benefits. I submit, Chair.
The other investments, yes, we have an investment regulation, and there's a cap on various investment asset classes. But you indicated that the investments that the fund wants to make, and they've reached the maximum of the cap. To our knowledge, I'm not aware of any asset class where the fund is at the maximum. The fund today is investing largely in government securities, and I think they're operating at 76 or 75%. The cap is 80%. The scheme is supposed to invest in equities, not supposed. They can invest in equities. The cap is 30%. I think that around 12 or 11%. The scheme can also invest in unquoted equities. I think the cap is around 15%. They're occupying around less than 2%. I think there was also another question whether they can invest in unquoted equities, I think by the chairman, where they bought shares in an investment bank. Yes, they can, but there has to be a clear process on how that decision is made in terms of documentation, how they came up to determine the pricing of that share, that clear disclosure. So that entity has to provide that.
No, the question was, can under what circumstances, because we invested in the Trade Development Bank, but it had not listed its shares on the stock exchange. So the question is, how did the staff of Nssf even know that this bank was selling shares? How safe is this kind of business? Are our Nssf staff going to now go and solicit? I thought everything we buy should be listed on the stock exchange.
Chair, not necessarily, and I think that's why in the provision for our investment regulations, there's a window for unquoted equity. You need to grow. The principle is that there is liquidity in this market. If an SME wants to attract this fund, there's a window for it. However, there are certain measures they have to fulfill in terms of what kind of, unpack, who are the directors, what are the financials of that scheme, can they disclose that information? On that basis, then the fund can go ahead and make an investment into it. Our requirement from them, do they have a clear process that undertook a due diligence before the investment was done? Then once we get that report for that kind of process, investment, it is in order. But you can see, much as the cap is 15%, they've not
Honorable Gaffer, lastly.
maximized it.
Yeah, the CEO is mentioning as long as they have gone through a clear process. Is that process documented elsewhere and where? And
There is no process as set for that purposes. However, any prudent fund manager or any prudent investor, before they put members' funds in an asset, there has to be an investment process. That is the work. That's why fund managers are paid. They must undertake research. There has to be a research report. It's not written anywhere, but it's a practice.
Don't you think, as the regulator of this sector, you are the one supposed to document that process for them to follow?
Yes, because it has started to come up, because originally the attraction was poor. Like I've said, I think there was less than 1% then. But now that it is picking up appetite, we are coming up with a guideline and a regulation.
So
not even a regulation that was.
So would you agree with me if I say in our recommendations we should bring it out that UBRA as a regulator should be able to issue these regulations for them to follow?
That is right. But that should not stop them from undertaking their professional responsibility. It's like telling a bank to undertake a due diligence on a borrower. It is a known practice. We are supposed to do it. But nonetheless, we can provide a standard that can be followed in executing
Maybe
that.
lastly, Corporation Secretary, on this specific matter, because corporate investment practices require a company floating equity shares to be registered on the stock exchange for regulatory purposes. In this case, a bank, trade development bank, didn't list its shares on the stock exchange. But Nssf staff went ahead and procured shares. What is your take on this matter?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. As the CEO indicated, in our investment regulations, we have stipulated several asset classes within which the funds of a scheme can be invested, and we've set the upper limit. And if you permit me, these include cash and demand deposits in institutions licensed under the Financial Institutions Act, that's up to 5%. Fixed deposits, time deposits, and certificates of deposits in institutions licensed under the Financial Institutions Act, this is up to 30%. There is commercial paper, corporate bonds, mortgage bonds, asset-backed securities, and collective investment schemes approved by the Capital Markets Authority, that's up to 30%. Government securities in the East African community, up to 80%. Shares of companies quoted on the stock exchange in East Africa and collective investment schemes approved by the Capital Markets Authority, that's up to 70%. So these are the listed companies. And that's why you see the cap is higher as compared to the private equity that I'm going to read later on, because these are properly regulated companies. So this the cap is up to 70%. Then they can invest in immovable property in Uganda, real estate investment trust, property unit trust approved by the Capital Markets Authority, up to 30%. And there's private equity in East Africa, so these are where the companies that are not listed on the stock exchange, and this cap is lower, it's up to 15%. However, there's due diligence required because these private equity companies are high risk. Many of them, since they are not regulated, you might find they don't have proper records, they don't have proper governance structures. So before a scheme invests in such a company, it's important that they do due diligence because they are taking on a high risk, investing in an unregulated or uncharted waters, unregulated space. But as the committee has wisely noted, it's an area that the regulator can come up with detailed regulations to ensure that members' funds is not lost. But the purpose why this private equity was allowed to allow development of SMEs. However, it shouldn't be just any SME or any institution. It's wise or prudent to invest in a company that is properly regulated, rather that has proper records, because they're not regulated since they're not on the stock exchange. But at least as you do the due diligence, this should be a company that has proper financial records, probably a fully constituted board of directors, proper reporting requirements to ensure that once schemes invest in that category, members' funds are not lost. But so far we've noticed not many schemes invest in private equity because of the challenges I've highlighted. I submit, Chair.
Wait. Okay. When you talked about 15%, maybe you need to explain to us how much are we talking about?
Chair, the percentages I've read out are a percentage of the total assets in a fund.
For a
These
given financial
percentages-
year?
Sorry?
Is that for a given financial year?
Not necessarily for a given financial year, because these schemes have their investment policy statements, wherein they are required, as they comply with these regulations, to set the actual limits based on their risk portfolios, their member profiles, and their risk appetite. So whereas the regulator sets the ceiling, there's no rigor requirement for you to get assets up to the maximum the regulator has set. You can actually have lower, or you can choose not to go into that asset class. Although we encourage diversification of investments, but we leave this to the trustees and to the prudent advice of their fund managers or investment teams to take cognizance of the risks involved in each asset class, then make appropriate decisions on what percentages to invest.
So you agree that this is high risk?
Private equity is high risk, Chair.
Investing in a bank that was not listed on the stock exchange is high risk.
True.
Honorable Masaba, lastly.
Chair, I don't know if I've got it right, but you've talked of 15% of the total assets in that fund. So for example, Nssf, with the 17.9 trillion, 15% is about 2.6 trillion. So Nssf can invest 2.6 trillion into unlisted companies. Is that what you meant?
Chair and members, in my submission, I said we have set an upper limit, an allowable limit as the regulator. However, there is no legal requirement for you to put in actually 15%. That is why we require the trustees to be prudent as they choose these asset classes, assess the risks involved, then choose what percentage of members' money to invest in such an asset class.
Chair, probably also to add to Honorable Masaba's question, normally a scheme has an investment strategy, and that strategy defines their risk appetite. In this case, the Nssf and unquoted equity, I think they've set a cap, whereas the cap is 15%. I don't think their risk appetite is more than 3% in that class.
You know, why I was looking at it, I think there you've left a loophole as the one regulating. Perhaps you would have categorized equity. Then you state under equity how much can be invested into the listed and those that are not listed. But once you leave a blank check, then you're leaving it at the discretion of the people who are managing the Nssf, the fund, to do as they do wish. They could get all the 2.6 trillion and invest it in companies that no one knows about, their share prices and all that. So don't you think it's a loophole that perhaps needs to be looked at as well?
Can I request my colleague to add more light on that?
Thank you, Chair and honorable members. I would like to touch on the private equity issue because this is, yes, it is a risky class, but when you look at best practice and how other entities like the Nssf operate, this is one where you even find companies that are struggling becoming very profitable, and those that are doing well losing money. But what is it that you look at when you're looking at this class of business? Because it's been very profitable in other jurisdictions, even in Kenya. So at the beginning, if you look at Uganda clays, for instance, what informs the decision to put money in a company that is struggling? or in a company that is doing well. Honorable members, for those companies that are doing well, you look at the market position. Does it have competitive advantages? Does it have low capital requirements? What are you putting in? Does it have favorable industry trends? Who are the competitors? So when you look at all that, you make a decision, and that's what the CEO has been talking about, that you must appraise what you're going into. And if the trustees don't do that, it becomes a challenge. If, for instance, we take the Uganda clays, the decisions that have been made, putting staff from the Nssf to go to Uganda clays, for instance, is showing you that there was a management issue. They think that they can turn the tables, and the relative profitability of 2 to 3 years shows you that changes can be made. So management is a very big problem. If I take, for example, some of the companies that have been successful under this class in Kenya, some of them were doing very badly. They ended up doing better. And those that you'd expect to do well, having a strong market position at a given time, you put in money and you lose it. So it's just a way of ensuring that those that are responsible, the trustees of the Nssf and the investment committees, the burden must be on their shoulders to make sure that if a company is struggling, it brings in money. And if it's doing well, it continues to do better. So that's the main thing, but indeed the risk is there, and that's why you have the trustees and the fund managers paid to make sure that every day they are monitoring the performance of these companies. Thank you.
Chair, Benjamin, you've gone around and you've not answered actually what I asked. I don't know if you got it very well. My question was about, don't you think you've left a loophole if you can leave it at the discretion of Nssf to determine that 15%? What I wanted is that perhaps you could allocate 30% to equity, but under that equity, there is a percentage that is supposed to go under the ones that are listed and the ones that are not listed. They could decide that big portfolio of equity, all of it, to take it to the unlisted, because you've left it at their discretion. So don't you think there is a loophole there?
No, it's not at their description. There is a limit. They can actually invest to the maximum of 15% in unquoted equity. Equities is 70%. Unquoted equity is 15%. However,
you're talking of 15% of the total value of the fund.
Yes, can I first complete, sir? 15% of the asset, that is the cap by law. However, you must come with an investment strategy, which is the investment policy statement, which we look into as a regulator. We verify and then gauge your risk appetite. For the Nssf, its risk appetite for purposes of unquoted equity, the rate is between 3 and 5%. Irrespective of the cap, they've limited it at that. Notwithstanding, much as that is the cap, they've, as far as to date, they've invested less than 2% in that class. So in principle, there is cautiousness, but what you've rightly guided in this meeting, there is need for a clear framework to guide that process from the regulator, which we are going to do. As far as
that is
the guideline or a regulation.
Satisfactory answer, at least.
Okay. Can we have that? The gentleman was talking about things that are necessary. Can you give them to us in writing? The market position, things that you should consider. You started talking about them.
Talking about first, if you are looking at a company that is doing well and you want to put in money, and I mentioned about the market position, the multiple avenues for growth.
We want all those in detail.
Okay.
You just submit them to us. Otherwise, we thank you and wish a good afternoon.